Hi YouTube family, welcome back to Recording Movies Recap. Today I will show you a 2013 Spanish sci-fi thriller film, titled The Last Days. In the year 2013, a mysterious epidemic spreads across the planet, causing people to develop an irrational fear of going outside. If they do, they die within seconds. Soon, the streets of every city and town around the world become a wasteland with not a single person outside. Mark Delgado has been living in his workplace for 3 months, surviving on the food from the cafeteria, and helping his co-workers dig a passageway in the parking lot that could take them to the subway. One day, he notices someone broke the window of a car to steal a GPS, which makes him quite angry, and provokes him into digging more aggressively. This turns out to be a positive thing, because thanks to him, they finally break the wall and find a safe way out of the building. Now everyone is getting ready to leave, and while waiting in line for some provisions, Mark can't help noticing one of his bosses, Enrique, has the GPS in his bag. Mark decides to follow him and confront him about it, and Enrique accepts to talk in private as long as Mark doesn't tell anybody else about it. Mark starts remembering how he met Enrique. Many months ago, the man was hired to take care of the company's productivity problems and was known for being ruthless when it came to treating employees, firing them without hesitation if necessary. When he called Mark to his office, he scolded him for taking so long with the project, refusing to hear how difficult the process of programming is, and gave him an ultimatum: he had to be done by the end of the month or he'd lose his job. Mark stayed until late at the office, working on his code and getting more frustrated by the second every time it fails. His girlfriend Julia called him to tell him she and her friend Andrea were closing up their shop, and Mark promised her he'd be there for dinner. However, his computer blue-screened, and he ended up staying longer than planned. When he finally made it to his apartment, he noticed that his neighbor opened his door just to see him arrive, and his girlfriend already had dinner without him. He found her making toys for her shop, and while looking at a puppet she considered keeping for the future, she brought up the subject of having a baby, to which Mark replied he didn't think it was the right moment. Later that night, he couldn't sleep, so he watched some TV. The news was talking about a Canadian teenager that recorded his suicide after spending 6 months inside his house, never leaving because of fear. The next morning at work, everyone was watching the same clip, causing Mark's coworker Rovira to nervously leave the area. Another coworker pointed out he hadn't changed his clothes or taken a shower in days. Back in the present, Mark tells Enrique that he wants to find his girlfriend, and the only way to properly navigate the subway tunnels is with the GPS, since phones don't have a signal anymore. He offers Enrique a deal: if he takes Mark to his girlfriend, he'll give him all the supplies he took from Rovira's locker. Enrique at first says no, but he changes his mind pretty quickly when Mark threatens to tell everyone about the stolen GPS. After saying goodbye to their co-workers, the two men enter the subway tunnels. The GPS is working fine, but they keep it off to save the battery life, and for now, they make do with a subway map. There are lots of people down there already, and they even hear gunshots, so they hurry up until they make it to the station, which is full of survivors from wall to wall. Suddenly, a teenager steals Enrique's bag with the GPS. He and Mark start chasing him through the station, following him upstairs and even dodging a fire until they make it to an area behind the turnstile. The kid joins 3 men that include his brother, who is a former cop and carries a gun. As the city outside finally starts losing all its power, the cop makes them fall to their knees while his brother finds the GPS in the backpack. Then he comes closer to get Mark's bag as well. When the lights go off inside the station too, Enrique jumps on the cop and struggles with him for the gun while Mark tackles the boy and recovers the GPS after it falls on the floor and gets its screen cracked. With the bag safe in his arms, Mark hides behind a column while Enrique manages to get the gun from the cop and kills him, before wounding his partner with a shot as well. Then he joins Mark and together they run away, easily mixing themselves in the crowd thanks to the darkness that has now taken over the place. They stop by the stairs to bandage the cut Enrique has on his hand and to check if the GPS is still working after it fell. Thankfully it does. When Mark sees Enrique is keeping the gun, he thinks he's about to be left behind, but Enrique says he's going to keep his part of the deal. Mark starts thinking about the days before the lockdown again. One morning, when he was leaving his apartment to go to work, he heard a big amount of flies inside his neighbor's place and noticed the door was open, so he went inside to see what was going on. He found the entire apartment filled with trash bags and a putrid smell that made him cough. But she can't bring herself to do it and dies when more of the ceiling falls on top of her. Mark wastes no time and starts running in the opposite direction, only to be jumped on by one of the crazy raiders. He's about to be stabbed when suddenly, Enrique appears and pushes the guy away before helping Mark to stand up as he tells him he knew he'd still need him. The attacker hasn't left though, and he quickly comes closer again to stab Enrique in the stomach. Enrique pushes him away again and is about to impale him with his spear when he notices it's just a kid, so he decides to spare him. Pretending his wound isn't a big deal and he's fine, Enrique tells Mark they should hurry out of the mall before the whole building collapses. They cross the sewers once more until they find a hole in the ceiling that someone else dug, and when they climb inside it, they find themselves in a movie theater. There's nobody around, so Mark approaches the glass door and sees that Julia's doctor's office is across the street. It's impossible for him to reach it like this though, because the tunnel is blocked. At first, it looks like she'll never turn around, but it seems Mark's tactic has a good effect because Julia suddenly turns and the couple finally sees each other again and cries with happiness. Mark rushes downstairs to tell Enrique about Julia, only to find him sitting at the theater, bleeding out. He wants to look for something to bandage the wound up, but Enrique doesn't let him, claiming his time has come. His last words are a request for Mark to stop whining and cross the street to reunite with his family once and for all. Enrique dies then, and Mark takes a moment to cry for him before following his advice. Both he and Julia make it to their respective doors, and after some hesitation, Enrique finally steps outside. He immediately starts feeling sick and dizzy, his ears start bleeding, and he has trouble walking. But by keeping his eyes on Julia, he manages to continue even after falling, crawling the rest of the way as a bright white light becomes the only thing he can see around him. Suddenly, Julia's face appears above him, and as the light disperses, Mark realizes he's successfully crossed the street and made it to the building, finally reuniting with his beloved. The couple stays in that building and starts a new life there, collecting water from the rain and growing Enrique's seeds. Their boy is born strong and healthy, and when he learns to walk, he goes outside on his own, proving the new generation isn't affected by the panic. Many years later, a group of wandering teenagers shows up at their door, so Mark and Julia decide to let their son join them so he can have a chance to know what the outside world is like and perhaps have a chance to rebuild society from the scratch. Thanks for watching.